Girls, ghost guys they're sexually attracted to. For this reason, most men think if a woman ghosts them, it means she wasn't really interested. They blame their looks, their timing, their message, or worse, they start spiraling into self-doubt. But the truth, high-value men understand something deeper. Sometimes the reason she disappears isn't because she's not into you, it's because she is. And that attraction triggers a fear in her she can't even explain. Women ghost men, they're sexually attracted to for reasons that most guys never even see. This isn't about playing hard to get, it's about subconscious behavioral triggers, emotional dissonance and status confusion that force her to retreat even when she craves you. And if you don't know these triggers, you'll keep thinking her silence means you lost, when really you were the test. These 10 psychological triggers will change how you understand women and yourself forever. Her own status, not your feelings. Here is what most guys never consider: women are not just attracted to status. They're terrified of lowering theirs, especially in front of a man. Desire: when a woman feels intense physical attraction to you, especially if it's fast, unexpected, or borderline intimidating, her first instinct isn't always to move forward, it's to withdraw, because if she engages and you don't validate her status in return, she risks embarrassment, shame, a hit to her sexual identity. This is called preemptive rejection, and it's one of the most misunderstood behaviors in female psychology. If a woman senses that a man is too calibrated, too centered, or too unpredictable, she may ghost to avoid being exposed as the one who's more invested. Not because you did something wrong, but because you did something right, and she doesn't trust herself to handle it. Here is where most guys screw it up. They chase, they double text, they try to clear the air, but that only proves her fear was valid, that you weren't the grounded man she hoped. But when you do nothing, when you let her ghost and you don't break frame, that's when her curiosity intensifies. You didn't seek reassurance. You didn't spiral. You showed her you're already good with or without her. When you hold your frame here, she doesn't just feel, she ghosts. When your self-worth threatens her identity, comfort zone. Every woman has an unconscious self-image. This is what I deserve, this is the kind of man I can attract, and this is the level of tension I can handle. When a man enters her life and doesn't fit that mold, not because he's beneath it, but because he exceeds it, her identity short circuits. She ghosts to protect the internal homeostasis of her ego. Let's say you're composed, non-reactive, and you don't pedestal her. You talk to her like a woman, not like a prize. That disarms her. Why? Because most guys she deals with reinforce her inflated self-image, but you didn't. Now she's forced to ask herself, wait, why didn't he chase me? That discomfort isn't rejection, it's growth tension. And most women avoid that feeling the same way men avoid rejection, by disappearing. This isn't a game, this is emotional symmetry. If she doesn't feel like she can meet you where you are, emotionally, sexually, or socially, she'll remove herself from the equation before you expose that imbalance. This is why guys with strong inner calibration get ghosted more often than average guys, not because they're doing less, but because they're doing nothing to inflate her illusion. And here's the edge. When you embody that calm, self-sourced energy, you give her the space to either step up or step away without you ever lifting a finger. When you accept her silence as feedback, not failure, you become the mirror shell, either ready to face or not. For she ghosts when you accidentally signal you're too outcome attached. Most men don't even realize they're doing this. You go on a date, there's chemistry, you feel like it went well, and now you subtly start waiting for her reply, for her interest, for her confirmation that what you felt was real. That energy, she can feel it, outcome attachment, and it's kryptonite for female desire. Women are evolutionarily wired to seek out men who initiate without need, men who lead without requiring a response. Why? Because it signals abundance, internal safety. A man who doesn't. On her validation, the polarity collapses. So what does she do? She ghosts. Not to hurt you, but to subconsciously check how real your confidence was. Did it collapse the moment she stopped engaging, or did you keep moving? Compliance test unaffected. Her ghosting is often a compliance test, not to see if you'll try harder, but to see if you'll stay centered when the emotional air gets cold. And if you pass that test, she starts watching you more closely, because now she's not sure she has the leverage. She thought she had men who understand this don't just get more respect, they become the exception. The man she remembers while dating others, the one who didn't flinch. When you're unattached to her response, you're not rejecting her, you're radiating freedom, and that's what she's really after. But this next behavior, it explains the ghosting pattern that even experienced men misinterpret. 5. She ghosts after post-validation shame sex because you triggered her post-validation shame. Here is a brutal truth that almost no one talks about. Women don't just chase validation, they fear what it means after they get it. Let me explain. When a woman is deeply attracted to you and finally gives in, especially sexually, there's a brief spike of emotional high, but if she senses that the interaction was more validating for her than for you, she may experience something called post-validation shame. That's when a woman feels like she gave too much and didn't get the status confirmation she secretly wanted. In return, if you didn't pedestal her after sex, if you didn't suddenly become more emotionally available, if you remained calm and grounded, she may interpret that as indifference, and her nervous system might not be ready for that. Ghosts? Not because she's mad, but because she's ashamed. Psychological recoil, ashamed that she exposed her desire, ashamed that it didn't give her the leverage. She expected, ashamed that she liked it more than you did. Most guys misread this as a pump and dump, but in reality, it's a psychological recoil, her ego trying to reset after a moment of perceived vulnerability. So how do you respond? By doing nothing? No damage control? No apologies? No attempts to re-engage? Why? Because her ghosting isn't an attack. It's a reflex. When you allow her to sit in that silence, and you don't flinch, you become the man who doesn't just lead in intimacy, but in recovery. And when she resurfaces, she'll come back differently, not because you chased, but because you didn't. 6. She ghosts. When your grounded energy threatens her chaos addiction, here is something men rarely understand. Most women are addicted to emotional volatility because it mirrors their internal reality. That constant cycle of highs, lows, drama, and relief. It's emotionally familiar, and familiar feels safe, even if it's toxic. So when you enter her life with calm, energy, stable, unmoved, unapologetically grounded, you don't soothe her nervous system, you disrupt it. She doesn't ghost because she's bored. She ghosts because your centeredness made her emotional roller coaster feel exposed. This is especially true for women who are used to unpredictable men. Guys who blow up her phone one minute, ignore her the next. That dynamic keeps her chasing it. Creates stimulation, so when you don't play that game, when you refuse to create artificial chaos, she loses her grip on the emotional terrain. That loss of control can feel like rejection, and ghosting is how she regains familiarity, your stability. Isn't the problem? It's the contrast. You made her realize that her version of normal is rooted in instability, and instead of rising to meet you in your groundedness, she retreats into silence because that's where she knows who she is. But this is your edge. You don't become Thestorm to make her feel something, you remain the mountain. When she's ready to stop chasing volatility and start choosing depth, shall remember you. A dopamine supplier and become a clarity mirror. You force her to choose the pattern she's addicted to or the man she can finally rest with. 7. She ghosts when your attention stops being a reward and starts becoming an expectation. There's a moment in every male-female dynamic where the energy shifts. At first, your attention feels scarce, intentional, selective. That triggers her curiosity and activates the chase. But then something flips. Maybe you text too often. You stop challenging her. You start expecting the interaction to continue instead of letting it unfold naturally. And here's what happens. Your attention, which used to feel like a reward, now feels like a default that kills tension, because women aren't just attracted to the man, they're attracted to the pacing of his attention, the rhythm, the contrast between presence and absence. When you give too much too soon, without challenge or withdrawal, your attention loses its charge. She no longer feels the risk of losing you, and without risk, there's no reward. That's when she ghosts. Not because she wants space, but because your presence became predictable, and predictable equals dispensable. Here's the brutal irony. Most men increase effort after this shift. They double down, try harder, try to win her back, but that just confirms her decision. You became the man who gave too much too easily. The solution: pace your attention like a king distributes currency, with intention, with scarcity, with emotional value tied to earned access. You don't withhold, but you don't flood. You create tension through unpredictability, not manipulation. When your attention stays rooted in self-worth, not outcome, she doesn't just feel intrigued, she feels honored to receive. Because the man who gives attention without needing a response is the man who makes her feel chosen, not chased. 8. She ghosts because emotional identity activation. Her attraction was never about you, it was about who she becomes around you. This one's subtle but lethal if you don't understand it. Most men think attraction is about their looks, money, muscles, status, but real female desire. It's about emotional identity activation. In other words, she's not just drawn to you, she's drawn to the version of herself that emerges in your presence. If she feels more feminine, more grounded, more desired, she leans in. But if your presence stirs up insecurity, shame, or emotional exposure, she retreats fast. So what happens when you trigger a side of her she's not ready to face? She ghosts, not because of what you did, but because of how she felt around you. She might have felt seen, or emotionally naked, or sexually disarmed. And that's terrifying if she has developed the internal structure to hold it. This is what I call mirror trauma, when your presence reflects back a version of her she doesn't yet accept. Maybe you made her feel too submissive, or too vulnerable, or too deeply desired without earning it. That reflection creates a fracture. between who she thinks she is and who she becomes around you, and most women, they run from that reflection instead of integrating it. Here, S, where you stay powerful. Don't over-identify with her ghosting. Don't assume it means you failed. It might mean you succeeded too quickly before she was ready to process it. When you understand that her attraction wasn't about you, but about her emotional transformation around you, you stop taking her retreat personally. You realize she didn't reject you. She rejected the upgrade. She wasn't ready to claim 9. She ghosts to punish your emotional availability because it broke her script. This is one of the most bitter pills a grounded man will ever have to swallow. You finally learn to communicate clearly. You express interest with confidence. You lead without manipulation. You show presence, depth, and desire without neediness, and then she ghosts. Why? Because your emotional availability short-circuited her control script. It left her with no buttons. To push no games, to play no leverage to use in her world, men are either cold and detached or desperate and over-available. But you were present, stable, clean, and that exposed the fact that she wasn't ready to meet you at that level. So what does she do? She punishes you for holding a standard she couldn't meet. Not overtly, not with anger, but with silence. It's a subconscious retaliation. How dare you not play the game I trained for? And this is why strong, emotionally healthy men get ghosted. More often than you'd think, because the level of presence they bring shines a spotlight on how fragmented her relational tools are. But here is your edge. You don't internalize her ghosting as rejection. You recognize it as a test of polarity, maturity. You don't retreat, you don't pursue. You let her feel the weight of walking away from something clean, something rare. And if she grows, she'll return with a different tone. But if she doesn't, she'll keep chasing dysfunction because, why? She ghosts. That's all she is. Ready for 10. She ghosts because she senses you don't know you're the prize, and that makes her question everything. This is the most powerful and most uncomfortable insight in masculine psychology a woman can feel when a man is attractive. But doesn't know it. She can sense his potential, his edge, his dominance. But if she picks up even a subtle trace of unconscious self-doubt, she ghosts. Not to hurt him, but because something in her gut says, if he doesn't see it, maybe it's not real. This is the paradox. Your attractiveness alone isn't enough. She needs to feel that you know what you carry. Because female attraction isn't just about how hot you are, it's about certainty. When a man is uncertain about his own value, even if he plays it cool, even if he looks good, she feels the dissonance, and that dissonance makes her pull away. You didn't lose her because you weren't attractive. You lost her because your internal world didn't match your external energy. And here's where everything flips. Women don't just want confidence, they want certainty. And certainty begins when you realize you've been the prize all along. When you stop performing, stop proving, stop chasing, and start embodying, that's when ghosting stops feeling like failure and starts feeling like filtration. She didn't reject you. She removed herself from a dynamic she wasn't calibrated for. And that's not your loss, it's her awakening. Update the script. Same without missing a single word and without dots and add more lengthy, important information.